has value. So how does it work? You take different product features. Let's say if it's ketchup, you might be taking the brand name, bottle size, salt, content, or the type of salt or type of sweetener, organic or all natural label. You take these different combinations of attributes, you put it together and you say, here's a product. Then you take that to the consumer and you say, what do you think? And then they will tell you how much they value that product concept. And they do that by either rating, ranking, or choosing among different products. And based upon that, you can figure out how much value they find in that product. And that value is what we call a utility. So they determine the value and we call that utility. And there are three different types of conjoint out there. There's adaptive conjoint analysis, conjoint value analysis, and choice-based conjoint analysis. The first two are your rating and your ranking, and they do with different features. And I'm not going to discuss those today, but I do want to tell you that they are out there. We're going to concentrate on the third one, which is choice-based conjoint. So now here's the audience participation part. Okay? So up here, a very simple example of conjoint. I have ice creams, and I have three of them for you, choice 1, 2, and 3. And they differ based upon the flavor, the fat content, whether or not you have a sauce or what type of sauce, and any additional toppings. Now what I want you to do in your head is look at these three choices and choose which one is the most appealing to you. And if you don't like any of them, you wouldn't choose any of them, then you can choose choice 4, which is none of these. So real quickly in your head, pick one of those numbers, 1, 2, 3, or 4 for none. Now let me get a show of hands. How many chose number 1? And number 2? And number 3? And how many didn't like any of them? Okay? Katie, which one did you choose?
Choice 1.
Choice 1. Now can you tell me why you chose choice 1?
With caramel sauce and it's reduced fat.
Okay, so for Katie, when she looked at this, caramel sauce was a strong driver of choice for her. And so was fat reduction. But not so much the vanilla or the added topping. So for Katie, sauce and fat reduction, or fat content, had value. Now imagine if I was to do this with not just this room, but hundreds of people, over and over and over again in all the different combinations. I could actually tell for our sample size what levels or what attributes, what features are driving choice for an entire sample. So now let's get a little bit more into the definitions of what's involved in a conjoint so we all have the same lexicon, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what choice-based conjoints can give you. So the first thing you need to have are attributes. Can someone let Dr. Pfister, please? You have attributes. And the attributes that I chose for this example were flavor, fat content, sauce, and additional toppings. Within each attribute, you have levels. Now for this question, I have 3 levels, chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. But you can have more than that. In a choice-based conjoint, you can have up to 9 before you start overwhelming consumers. Then you have a concept, which I mentioned earlier, where you have one level of each attribute that you put together to make one product. And you're asking them to look at this one product. So I'm showing you 3 concepts in green, blue, and yellow. The whole question is called a choice task. And then you have this last part, this none of these option. Now this is very important to have in a conjoint because if I didn't, and I said to you, choose which one you like the most, well, what happens if you don't like any of them? And I made you choose. Then you're giving false utility to something that you don't really like. You're telling me you like it when you actually don't. So by having this none of these option available, I'm able to actually tell what you would do in the real world. If this is what you would present in the real world, you wouldn't choose any of them. And that's what I'm trying to measure. So why choice-based conjoint analysis? Why would you choose this method? Well, because consumer choice drives attribute importance. Consumers go to the grocery store, and let's say the consumer is trying to buy some plain potato chips. And when they go to the store, they see all the different brands. They see baked, they see fried, they see ruffles, they see the flat kind, they see different salt contents or different cooking methods. And they choose one. And if they are consistently choosing ruffles because they like those ridges, then that tells the marketers, that tells the companies, that tells the product developers that ruffles, the ridges, have value. They tell us what's important. We don't tell them. It's how consumers actually make decisions. They take all of this information together They value all the different things that they have to choose from, and they make a choice by valuing all the things together. And a choice-based conjoint asks questions in a similar way. It's very useful in product development. So you can use this in something called a market simulator. So what you get out is a value for each of these different levels. And you can actually take the different levels and put them together in a new product. You can run it through a market simulator, and the market simulator will tell you what percentage of the consumers in your survey would actually want to buy that one or choose that one. It's also very useful for helping products designed to go to sensory testing. So if we determine what's important in a conjoint, the product developer goes and makes that product. They can then come back to me, and I can do consumer testing with it to make sure that the product that the consumer told you they value is the same product that they're tasting, that they like the taste as well as the concept. And it's very versatile. You can use it for any product that has different attributes and different levels. This was something that was not originally for food scientists. It was originally a marketing marketing technique for computers and cars and things like that. But we can use it for the food and beverage industry. So what does it measure? Keep talking about value, utility. What is that? You get individual utility values for each respondent. And that is a number that represents the attractiveness of that feature. So how many times the consumer chose a product that had that feature, that will start getting a value associated with it. And in general, the higher the utility score, the more value it has to the consumer. So that is a real quick overview on conjoint in general and choice-based conjoint. Now let's talk a little bit about coffee. So in 2010, Starbucks, the leading earner for coffee beverages, earned over $2.8 billion. And McDonald's in the McCafe line sold over 80 coffee drinks per restaurant per day in 2010. So coffee is a multi-billion-dollar business. And determining what features are driving consumer choice is going to be very important for how companies are going to target the consumer. So I chose latte-style beverages to study. And I'm defining a latte-style beverage as any beverage made with espresso, milk or a milk-type lightener, and then maybe additional flavor added. Now this definition is an agglomeration of how McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, Caribou, and Starbucks are defining latte-style beverages. Those 4 restaurants were chosen because they are the top 4 earners for specialty coffee drinks. So I have 2 objectives that I'm going to share with you today. 1, figure out overall what's driving choice of latte-style beverages. And 2, because I work for all the dairy farmers, would lactose-free milk be a driver of choice if it was available as an option in these different places? Because right now, the only thing that is available if you're lactose intolerant is soy milk, not lactose-free milk. So I want to know if lactose-free milk was available, could it compete with soy milk or some other non-milk-based lactose-free lightener? Now, the attributes and levels that I chose. First attribute is location. So I chose a coffee house like Starbucks, Caribou, a fast food restaurant like McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, sit-down restaurant, your Paneras, your IHOPs, convenience store like a Sheetz or a Circle K, I was going to say Wawa, I'm from up north, a grocery store where you can get pre-made beverages as well. I also looked at milk type, where it's just regular milk, lactose-free milk-based, which is not available, but I want to know, does it have any value, and lactose-free, not milk-based. I also looked at fat content for full fat, reduced fat, and fat-free. We looked at sweetener, sugar, no sweetener, no calorie sweetener like your Splendas, your Equals, and natural no-calorie sweetener like stevia or Truvia. And additional flavor. You were given the option of additional flavor shot. Would you like that? So flavor and no flavor. Now, all of these attributes and levels were defined for the consumers when they were taking the survey. So there was no question on what interpretation of each of these things were. So I created a survey using software from Sawtooth Software Inc. And I launched this online to a database of consumers. And I asked demographic questions first, just to get a general idea of my population. And I removed anybody under the age of 18, and I removed anybody who said they only drink black coffee, because they're not interested in lattes, because that has a lightener in it. So these are the 2 groups that I removed. And then I asked different coffee purchase and consumption behavior questions to help me tell the story of the conjoint data. Because of time, I'm not going to go into the demographic questions or the behavior questions. However, if you're interested later on, I'd be more than willing to discuss this in more detail. So results. I surveyed 756 respondents over a 2-day period. I used data from 721 respondents. I removed anyone that had a root likelihood value of less than 33%. Now what this is, if I give you 3 choices of coffee and a none option, so 4 options, in 1 in 4 options, I should be able to predict which one you're going to choose after a while when you're taking the survey, because you're doing these choice tests over and over and over again. So about 25%. If I can't do that, you're either not understanding the survey and you're having trouble as you go through, or you're going click, 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 trying to get to the end of that sucker so that you can get your reward at the end, your incentive at the end. So I removed those people, and just to be safe between the difference between 25% and 26%, I removed the bottom third. And data was analyzed 3 ways, of which I'm going to present to you next. I looked at the total sample size of 721 consumers. I then used cluster analysis to segment by groups to see if I even had groups that would develop. And then I looked specifically at my self-defined lactose intolerant consumers. So real quickly, how to interpret the results I'm going to show you on the next slide. Only levels within an attribute can be compared. So I can't compare coffee house to full fat because the data is calculated within an attribute. So they're not comparable between different attributes. Also, all utilities need to sum to 0. So a negative value is not necessarily bad, it's just not as liked, it's not as valued as the other one. So don't think of negative as bad, it's just not as good. So let's look at location first. And what you'll see here is that coffee house had the highest utility, significantly higher than any of the other locations. So when consumers have the option to choose, they want to go to a coffee house to buy a latte beverage. When we look at milk type, the highest utility was milk-based. If consumers have the choice, they want something that is milk-based opposed to lactose-free milk-based, which had the next highest utility. Now, keep in mind, we're going to talk in a few minutes about how many lactose-intolerant consumers I had in the study. Fat content. Reduced fat had the highest utility. Ooh, sorry about that. Followed by fat-free. Okay? Now, this is something very interesting because we got a big push in America for health and wellness. So people want something that's a little bit healthier. So it's not that surprising that reduced fat has a little higher utility. And for sweetness, natural no-calorie sweetener had the highest utility. Now, this was defined to the consumers as things like stevia and stevia. Now, the natural word to a consumer is a very positive word. They like that word. They don't necessarily know how that product is going to taste, but they like the idea of that word. We know that stevia has a pretty bad aftertaste in beverages. It's a licorice aftertaste. So this is where there's a little bit of a, you take the conjoint data and then eventually you're going to have to work on the product development and the sensory side. They're telling you this is what they like. They're not necessarily going to like how it tastes, but they like this idea. And then additional flavor. Given the choice, if I can have an extra flavor shot or not, I want flavor. Consumers care about flavor. We know that that is the #1 thing to consumers. So that's for the overall population. Then I used cluster analysis on the utility scores to see if I had different groups that could emerge from the data. And I found that I had 3 distinct groups. The first group I'm calling indulgent consumers. And they were the consumers where full fat and sugar were the primary drivers of choice for them. They wanted that beverage to taste good. It's not about health, it's about taste. The second group I'm calling location consumers. It didn't matter what they got, it just had to be at a coffee house. They wanted